Welcome back.
Hi, friend.
Hi. I bet you're really excited about this episode.
I am so excited. This is in my wheelhouse, shall I say. I'm a bit of an expert on this one.
So today we're going to be talking about sex work.
Period.
In all the forms.
Amen.
Because there are lots of forms of sex work.
There are a lot of forms. And also allyships that you remind me of often.
Exactly. So we're going to get into it. But first, a cheers.
A toast.
To delighting in life's small pleasures. What is your small pleasure these days?
So recently I started back doing my own gel manicures, and I'm excited for that because I forgot how much I love doing my own nails. When I was in high school, this was a thing. Like, I would not go to school with chipped nail polish, and every other day, me and my best friend, Dion, did our nails. And so it just feels so therapeutic, like I'm taking good care of myself. So my nails for sure. What about you?
And your pocketbook.
My pocketbook? What about my pocketbook?
Like, you're not spending money on getting your nails done.
Oh, this is true. I thought you meant my grandma calls your vagina a pocketbook.
Oh, no.
So I was confused, but you're talking about the real. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
got it.
not. Well, I guess we will be talking about
It's
pocketbooks.
on par for the conversation. That's why I thought we were headed there, but
No.
not yet. Okay.
Your bag.
Yes.
Your bag. Your wallet.
Very true.
Well, speaking of nails, I guess I can stay on this theme. I recently did my first nail art.
Okay, come on for the glitter. Now, let me just say for folks who cannot see this that Margo is a little conservative with her nails, and so it's only one nail.
One nail. I did light pink and then one sparkly nail. That's not even the right tone, but it makes me happy.
It makes you happy, and I'd go off, sis, because it definitely is a step bolder for you.
Right. And I also, so it was one of those things where I was like, oh, nail art's for young people. And so as we were talking about big age and like what's appropriate and what's not, I was like, I'm going to do the nail.
Yeah, we have to break that,
Because what?
that conditioning that we have to look a certain way at our age.
Right.
And so I used one glittery nail at a time.
It's baby steps for me. So, season 4, maybe I'll have lots of glittery nails or a color that I've never tried.
Would you ever do acrylic with nail art?
So I have done acrylic before.
Ooh.
High school.
Okay. All right.
Once. No, I wouldn't do acrylic. It's not good for my nails.
Yeah, that's true.
But I love it, and I love it on other people. I would do gel with nail art.
Okay, so we need to work towards this.
Yeah.
Stay tuned, people.
Okay.
In today's Dumb Shit People Say, we have a quote from none other than Carrie Ann Lisenby. She is a member of the Utah House of Representatives, and she recently said that she believes women can control the intake of semen during sex. Now, this is according to reporting by the Salt Lake Tribune. This is what she said. I received a text message today saying I should seek to control men's ejaculations and not women's pregnancies, and that I clearly don't trust women enough to make choices to control their own bodies. This is what she said. She then outlined her response to such a claim to reporters, and she said in response to that text message, my response is, I do trust women enough to control when they allow a man to ejaculate inside of them and to control that intake of semen. Margo, what do you think about controlling the intake of semen?
Well, she's so full of shit because has she ever heard? So there's so many different layers, right? Even in situations where people are practicing safer sex using a condom, there are so many times that men, I forget the word, it's like sleuth or sleeth or like
I've heard of this.
They like take off. So, okay, query, like even in those situations, how's someone supposed to control that? Has she ever heard of sexual assault or rape?
Here we go.
Has she ever heard of a condom breaking?
Mm-hmm.
Has she ever heard of birth control not working?
Yeah. But it also is this consistent, like, assault on women's bodies through this idea that we are the only responsible party.
Right, it's blaming the victim.
Absolutely. So it's to allow a man to ejaculate inside of you, to control the intake of semen. How do you control the intake of semen? I don't even know what that means. So at the time that he's ejaculating or you think he might be, you're supposed to get up and run away?
Well, have you heard of the rhythm method?
What is that, like with the moon cycle?
Now I'm questioning whether that's the right term. Or the pull-out method.
Oh, like pulling out?
Maybe it's not the rhythm method.
No, the rhythm method is like, I think, counting the days.
Oh, yeah, like counting your cycle. I'm so out of it. Yeah, like you plan to have unprotected sex, but you plan that the individual who has a penis isn't going to ejaculate in you.
And to your point, how do you know that that's going to happen?
Or it doesn't happen even if you plan for it.
Exactly, because you can't control someone else's response in that way. And so, again, this is what she's using as a way to support just very harmful legislation around bodily autonomy and access to abortion.
I think also outside of the real holes in her argument that this just isn't a possible physiological thing to do and you can't account for all of these other things, it creates this false narrative that's not based in fact that people hold on to.
Yeah. Well, because she's not the only one who said something like this before. Like, who is it who said that if a sexual assault occurs, then a woman won't get pregnant? As if pregnancy, like a semen and an egg being fertilized, only happens when you
want a baby.
Like psychologically, it's connected to everything that happens physiologically.
Right. Again, just biologically untrue.
Just untrue. And are these people really this stupid?
So I actually think it's really much worse than that. I think they're peddling false narratives that they know are false because they feel so strongly about the fight against access to bodily autonomy.
Yeah, and it's dangerous too because they are speaking at times to an audience who doesn't know that.
Right.
And they know that as well. And so these false narratives are really being planted in certain communities throughout social media. They're taking hold of people psychologically who don't have the tools or they have been completely coerced into having false beliefs.
Right. And kind of along the dangers of social media and the proliferation of things that are untrue, this idea that our bodies are totally controlled by our minds.
Yeah.
And that we've talked about that related to a lot of different things. And of course, the importance of mental health and mind-body connection and knowing your body and creating environments where you can thrive, all very positive for health outcomes. But me saying to my body, as an ovulating woman right now, body, don't ovulate.
Body, don't get pregnant.
Or know exactly when I'm ovulating, right? You know, hopefully around when you're ovulating, but you don't have control.
Body, don't intake semen.
Don't intake semen.
So, Margo, what do you take from all this?
I mean, we need to have way more sex positive, sex accurate education because my 11-year-old who has had sex education in school this year would know that this is a physical impossibility.
Absolutely.
Right? And not everyone has access to sex education.
Absolutely. There is no comprehensive sexuality education in this country. And I have worked very closely with folks on the ground in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County who've been successful, at least in the Pittsburgh Public School, of getting that passed. Now, how it's going to be implemented is yet to be foreseen. But before them, I mean, it was just up to an individual health teacher to talk about whatever they kind of wanted to.
Right. And many states, particularly states where people are having a platform to spew this nonsense, those are the states we need to be most concerned about because those are the states where the young people are not getting comprehensive sexuality education. Yeah. So I think as a call to action, and we can put this in the show notes, we'll link organizations that are trying to get comprehensive sexuality education in the schools. Great. I think that would be great.
Absolutely.
And let's start having more conversations in the private community about this as well.
Yes.
We're talking about sex work, which is something that we've skirted around on the podcast during season 1 and 2, but we haven't kind of focused on it as a subject, particularly related to sex work and big age. And so I know this is something that maybe our listeners and viewers are going to find interesting or have questions about. So frame the issue for us.
Absolutely. So what we know is that sex work is work, and we agree on that.
Absolutely.
And we believe that commercial sex workers should be protected. And when they are not protected, it's because they are being exploited. But I think we want to broaden the conversation today because sex work, as you said, takes many forms. And there are times when it may not be exploitative. And we want to dig deeper into all of the different forms of it.
Or is the question, is sex work always exploitative? Because I think there are going to be listeners and viewers who might take a different view. And I think I'm still trying to figure that one out too. I am 100% on board with sex work is work, and there should be protections, and that the way the commercial sex trade is in the United States now is exploitative, particularly to women in marginalized communities, particularly to Black women and women of color. Dangerous, exploitative. But what is a version of sex work that is not exploitative? I don't know if everyone can agree on that exists, but maybe it can.
Well, and I think we may disagree here because I think that there is nuance that should be brought into this conversation. And I'm speaking as one certified hoe. I love to do some thought shit, some hoe shit. Yeah, and I was raised with this dynamic and this narrative in many ways that we'll get into today. And for you as an ally, I can't think of a better person to have this conversation with.
Thank you.
Thanks for being my hoe ally.
I'm here to support it.
Thank you.
Before we get into it, we have an amazing sponsor today, and take it away, BetterHelp.
So I've had a relationship with BetterHelp for a while now, and I love them because they connect people with licensed mental health professionals. And this is all done, Margo, online and even through their app. And so they take out all of the barriers to finding someone to support you with your mental health, and they make it incredibly easy. I actually, when I started, I filled out a questionnaire. I was able to say what I was looking for in a therapist, but also the kind of therapist that I thought would be helpful to me. So for example, a woman of color, a woman who is either queer identifying or understands the queer community. You're literally able to check those boxes, and then they give you a list of therapists that may be able to meet your needs. And not only is it sitting down face-to-face virtually with your therapist, but you also have access to just chat with them. How many times have we been going through a very difficult moment or a moment of crisis and we've needed to talk to someone right away? Being able to just pull out your phone and text your therapist, for me, just makes things so much easier and really grounds and anchors positive mental health practices in your day-to-day life.
Absolutely. And that communication, of course, is all confidential through their online platform, which makes it so easy.
So we are so grateful for BetterHelp for sponsoring today's episode. We will ensure that in the show notes or in the description box, if you are watching us on YouTube, a link to BetterHelp is there, and we highly encourage you to get involved with their services today. Make sure you use our link.
Okay, so back to our topic of the day. Sex work takes different forms, and so I think that we all hear the word sex work and think of different things. Right? Maybe some of us think of strip clubs. Maybe some of us think of OnlyFans. Maybe some of us think of back pages of Craigslist. Some of us think of times where there were different districts in the community where people were walking the street.
Yeah.
And so I think we should kind of take to the audience what it is, because it's evolving.
It is evolving. And so to your point, I think growing up especially, I saw sex work only as sex workers who walked up and down a street and they picked up dates or johns. Oftentimes they had these imbalanced, problematic, and abusive relationships with pimps. And they may be involved with drugs, or they may have a substance abuse disorder, and someone around them, they are exploiting them because of that. And to this day, that is still true for some. But I think my point today is going to be to tell people or remind others that it takes a lot of different forms. And so I thought about this, and I think it kind of comes in three categories, okay? So you have your commercial sex workers who are here. You have your sugar babies, which we have not always talked about as sex workers here.
Can you tell Tashira is a trainer? Okay, I'm liking the concentric circle.
Yeah. And then down on the bottom, you're going to have your heuxs. okay? And hoes may also be gold diggers. They may be IG baddies. They may be groupies. But my thought is all of these people engage in some form of sex work. Now,
Wait, who are sugar babies?
I have a visual here that I think is really important, okay? So, for people who are not watching, you may want to hop over to YouTube because this is really important. I think for visual learners, this is going to be helpful.
I'm going to describe what I'm seeing. 3 concentric circles, the 3, 2 on the top, 1 on the bottom, where there's an overlap of the 3 circles. One has consensual sex work.
Commercial.
Commercial sex work. Mm-hmm. The other is a sugar baby. And the other, I'm not going to say the word, and a gold digger.
Yeah, it's a hoe or a gold digger. Okay, so a sugar baby, you asked that I describe that, is someone who has a relationship with an older person. I'm going to use a hetero narrative here.
But it's not always hetero, right?
But it's not always, but it's just easier for the context of describing all of these different categories. So, sugar baby is one who is usually younger than their sugar daddy. Sometimes sugar mama, but typically sugar daddy in a hetero context. And they are likely given a monthly stipend to spend time with, to engage with, to go out on dates with this person.
But it's dates that are more expansive than just sex, like go out to dinner.
Absolutely. And so that's why these two have a conjoining circle.
Because when the way you describe sugar baby, I would call that maybe a gold digger.
Aha. I knew you were going to say that, but this is different.
Okay.
This is different, and let me tell you how. So if you are a gold digger or you're a good old-fashioned hoe, likely what happens is that your relationships may be transactional, but all of them are not transactional. You don't have to be on a monthly stipend. You don't have to receive money out the gate. If you're a sugar baby, you getting money coming in the door, right? This is my date fee. Here's my expectation.
So like an escort.
I'm looking for a monthly allowance. But yes, in some ways, right? Because it's supposed to be a long-term relationship.
But are sugar babies meeting their sugar daddies through like a service, or like a person is like marketing them, or?
Yeah, I'm happy you asked that. So from my research, there actually are sugar baby websites that will connect you with said sugar daddy. Oh. Yeah, I looked into that, but I think I was a little bit too old. But I was like, I like multiple streams of income. Let me see what I could jump
She
out
likes
here
to
and do.
diversify her portfolio.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Just Us hasn't hit the 1 mil mark yet, but we're getting there.
We're getting there. So save me from sugar babying, but it's not off the table for me.
Okay.
All right. So then with hoes and gold diggers, you can have these relationships where it's not that you are looking for the transaction specifically, but it is that you welcome it, right? So here's my example. You may have somebody who, we use this word like tricks off on you or tricks on you, right? Sometimes we hear of Johns being called tricks. So we use it as a verb when we say they come to town and they trick on you, spend a little bit of money on you, or they fly you out, you get flued out, you go to dinner, but then you come home, right? It's not an ongoing relationship as it is with a sugar baby. Now, in the middle here for me, what makes all of these kind of circles conjoined is that there is some level of a transaction that is occurring, but also that these people are likely sex positive. And that is what kind of keeps them all within this same, I guess, dialogue together.
So interesting, because like, I guess I just didn't understand the origins of sex positive. I thought sex positive, I guess was wrong, was more along the lines of body positive.
Say more.
That it was women. I mean, I guess it is like women reclaiming their own sexuality. But I guess I was thinking about it more in the context of relationships, feeling more comfortable asking what they need. But I guess
I don't think we're saying the same thing, right? It is
right.
Linear, like it's a Likert scale, right? So maybe there's one form of sex positivity where it's just like I'm saying what it takes to please me. I'm standing in my pleasure. There's another part of it that says I understand what my sexuality, my bodily autonomy the value that it can hold in relationship to other people. And sex might be that thing that we have in common.
Okay.
As far as the relationship is concerned. I hope I'm making sense.
You are.
Okay.
This is my I'm learning face.
Gotcha.
I'm like focusing.
So let's talk about my time as a sugar baby and my time as a hoe. Will that help?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So
Wait, guys, this is all news to me.
Because I've never told you about the time that I had a sugar daddy.
When?
I was 23.
Okay,
24.
I hadn't met Tashira yet.
No, we had not met. And
How old was he?
He was 38.
Okay.
Younger than we are now, but definitely much older than me at the time. And so I fly down to Puerto Rico with a friend. Okay. And I meet this Rasta who is Jamaican, but he lives in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
He owns a couple businesses. Right away, he's enamored with me.
Of course.
Okay. Here's the part where I would not do this at a big age, but I'm going to be honest about my experience at that age. We went home together that night. Okay. Hooked up that night. And
in my experiences, my terms, that would be called a one night stand.
But it wasn't a one night stand.
But it could have been.
Yeah, it could have been for sure. And I think I thought maybe it was going to be, but this is why I always say that I've never had a one night stand, because
everyone falls in love with you.
Period. Said got that Aquafina wet. Like, it's so good until you have to come back. And so before I knew it, he's flying me back from Puerto Rico. He is taking me on shopping sprees, and he's paying my rent.
Oh.
It's the relationship that I have with the Rasta, as he will always be known. And it lasted for probably about a year. I didn't feel pressure. I didn't feel like I had to see him. I didn't feel like I had to go down there. It was just, hey, what are you doing this weekend? You want to come to Puerto Rico? I sure do. Let's go. I'm going to go to Puerto Rico.
So here's what's so interesting about that, because if you had described that to me before using the term sugar baby, I would just say you were dating someone who's really generous.
That is so interesting.
Yeah. So but this is important, because I think that we assign terms that evoke feelings in different people, right? So that scenario, when you first said sugar baby, I was thinking, like, I don't think I know anyone who has been in that situation, and I didn't even know you were in that situation.
Yeah.
But then when you described what that was, I definitely know people who have been in that situation.
Absolutely.
And I would just call it dating older men.
It was so interesting because there's also a class dynamic here too.
Right.
There are certain people who are going to embrace this idea of being a sugar baby. Some people that are just like, oh no, I just like to date men with money or older men.
Or people who are more sophisticated.
But at the end of the day, I wasn't trying to be this man's wife. I knew that this was not a long-term relationship or the potential for that. And so there was a transaction that was occurring, whether people want to admit that or not.
Did you enjoy spending time with him?
I did. But here's the thing. This is where things got murky, Margo. I found out he couldn't read.
Okay.
And I just...
Tashira, we've already talked about dating a bus driver. Tashira, a lot of people can't read.
I'm like, is this being like ableist or classist? I understand this, Margo.
So you didn't want to marry someone who couldn't read. That doesn't mean you didn't enjoy spending time with him.
But this is what I'm saying. It was getting in the way of our lifestyle,
Of course,
Margo.
because you're an intellectual that likes to have conversations.
No, dog, it's not even that.
You wanted to know which sign to get off on the highway.
That is what it was. He was driving and could not follow the signs. And I said, oh, this nigga can't read. And so at the time, I was a reading teacher, ironically. And so my friend was like, well, maybe you can teach.
Okay, so you broke up with him because he couldn't read.
I mean, not immediately, but eventually because one day he was saying, and I'm so sorry if this is not, he said, you should get some Ajax to clean your stove. And this was after he couldn't follow the signs. So I said, okay, something is going on here. And I said, hey, how do you spell Ajax? I'm not familiar. And he said, oh, you spell it Xay. And I said, oh, this man is completely illiterate. And so we saw each other a couple more times after that. I actually ended up moving to DC, and that kind of slowed the communication just naturally because it wasn't as easy to get to Puerto Rico. And over time, it just kind of faded away.
What did it look like when you stopped paying your rent?
See, I never really needed it. And so it wasn't a consistent thing.
Okay.
And that's the thing, too, that I want to point out here, because I think someone listening to this may say, well, it's too easy to give up your power, right? And I think that is the concern that many have, especially if they're coming from a feminist lens, which I understand. But I never needed him. I was paying my bills before I met him. It was just, I knew that there had to be a level of expectation around him taking care of me or doing nice things for me or being very generous, because I was coming to the table bringing something that he wanted and vice versa. And I was open about that.
So it's just a very interesting framing and really helpful for me to understand because, and probably helpful for a lot of our listeners, because I imagine most people have experience with someone in their lives who've been in a relationship like that, and maybe they would not define it as sex work, and that's fine.
Oh, totally fine.
Right, or wouldn't define it as a sugar baby, sugar daddy sort of situation. But it's also fine to describe it that way.
It is fine because what we're doing is demystifying the concept and the idea. And I also hope we are starting to broaden the conversation around people who do this commercially every day so that we can create policies that are much more inclusive and allow for them to have safer practices.
Absolutely.
That's not going to happen if we are judging and condemning people.
Well, I think, yes, absolutely. And I think it also goes to this idea of like, the purity medal and that folks in more pure communication or relationship or profession are of higher morality.
Yeah.
And at all levels, all relationships are transactional.
I'm so happy you said that because I was thinking, would we be aligned on that point?
Oh my gosh, I think of that all the time. Like in the context of intimate relationships, but also business relationships or friendships. It's not a tit for tat thing, but I'm in relationship, in community with you, in a space with you because I'm not speaking just to you, general person, because you provide something that I want and I provide something that you want. I go to a exercise class, I'm in community with you, you're providing me the exercise, I'm providing you the money so that you can teach your exercise class.
Yeah, absolutely. And for some people that also is the narrative or the conversation that you start off with in relationship.
And for others it's not, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Amen. Very, very, very true. And then I want to talk a bit too, Margo, about the messages that we receive from our mothers and our grandmothers about this kind of stuff, because I think that's interesting, and culturally there may be some difference. And so,
you think?
I'm wondering, did you ever have conversations? This is the term that I hear white women use about like marrying up, or what does that look like for you or for your friends growing up?
I don't think we talked about it so much from our own experiences, but the idea of marrying up is marrying someone of a different socioeconomic class. But among people that I was in community with, particularly in New England, that has a very different concept.
Oh, really?
Yes, because there's old money, there's new money. There's academic affiliations, like where did they go? Like it was very important. This is true, which might blow your mind, right? It was very important for some of my friends to date people who went to Ivy League schools.
Interesting.
Right. So that was a commodity, or I don't know if that's a commodity, like that was a thing that was really important. It was really important for some people to date people in certain industries, which translates to money, right? So I know people who are like, yeah, I really want to date someone in finance.
I'm pulling back up my diagram because that sounds like whole behavior to me, but go on.
Right. And then there's, so yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up with a grandmother and her sisters. My grandmother was one of 10, and my grandmother played a primary role in raising me, she and my grandfather. And so I grew up around the table at my great grandmother's house with all of these elders, my great aunts and uncles, even my great aunt, my great grandmother's sister was alive as well until I was about 20.
It's amazing.
Right? And so just a multi-generational household. And so I grew up as a little kid sitting at the kitchen table at my great grandma's house, hearing my grandmother and her sisters talk about running men's pockets. Like it is just part of the economic system in low income environments. In the same way often that I think about men who sell drugs, or they might do credit card fraud, or they might be scammers depending on where they're from. A lot of that happens in the Black community in South Florida, for example, is the way that women talk about, you know, running a man's pockets, or he has to do for me, or I'm about to trick off for a little while, I got to get my kids some shoes for school. It is just a natural part of the ecosystem and the environment, and you're not looked down upon for it. In fact, if you are fucking with a man and he's not doing for you, you're dumb.
So here's the thing that is different. I think particularly from my experiences and growing up with a feminist mother and in a feminist orientation and going to an all-women school. So this is where I stray from in my own experiences. And I remember having this conversation with you about first dates.
Yeah.
And you joking with your grandma that you went on a first date and the person that you went on said date with, you and they split the bill. And your grandma was horrified. I went on a lot of first dates where I split the bill. I think I split the bill with Josh on our first date.
And what did that signify for you? Like, did you want to do it?
I mean, I think I had complicated feelings around my feminism and being courted that have kind of worked out over time. I think I initially in my relationship with my husband wanted him to court me more, but he didn't really know that or how, and would have, I think, although neither of us really had any money. So there was kind of lots of things at play. But I hear that actually more in big age, that friends of mine are so sad that their partners don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too.
And I've actually come full circle in that regard, because I just do it for myself.
Which is beautiful.
Right. So I don't get upset. So I have the most amazing husband. He's an incredible father. He is not great with gifts.
Yeah.
That's just one of his weaknesses. He didn't buy me a gift for my birthday. I mean, we had an amazing day. We did a lot of stuff together. That would upset you.
You see my face.
Yeah, right? No card, no flowers. And so there's a version where I used to get really upset.
Yeah, I understand.
Really upset. You remember.
I understand.
And so I guess we're straying off topic. I think that all relationships are transactional. I think that everyone brings a level of service to a relationship.
Yeah.
And sex work and engaging in intimacy, physical intimacy specifically, is one aspect of a relationship. And if that is the center of the relationship, I have never been in a relationship like that, I don't think.
Deep contemplation.
Then so be it. Well, who are we to judge?
Who are we to judge? And see, and here's the thing too, and this is why I have my whole white toenail season, conversation over on Instagram primarily. I have the 4-point manifesto about what it means to be a thought. Thought stands for that hoe over there for folks who do not know. It is my attempt in a sex positive way to reclaim this idea of what it means to be a hoe. Because I find, especially at the time when I dated men exclusively and many of my hetero friends, that we are not coming to the table being very open and honest about our needs. And there is this huge phenomenon right now of the adult toddler fucking husband, right? Where you were doing everything in a household. You were caring for the kids. You were working outside of the home. You were managing day-to-day responsibilities. You're planning the vacations. You're doing everything. And your partner is not being told sometimes or taking the effort to show up for you in a way that lands for you. And so my argument is to start those conversations early from the outset. And we cannot be concerned about, well, he's going to think I'm a hoe. He going to think I'm a gold digger. So the fuck what? If he thinks that, he's not the person for you.
So it's so interesting because I wish I had had that messaging when I was younger, because I felt so, and we've talked about this, so confused about the selfishness of people I was dating. But if I had just allowed myself to be a little selfish and think about my needs over theirs, I wouldn't have been as confused and heartbroken.
Amen.
Because I didn't like everyone I dated either, or didn't want to marry everyone I dated. I just didn't want to be rejected.
Right. Very true. So I think that some of this is also about doing that interrogation to figure out what's important to you. So over time, you've determined that's not something that I need. I can do it for myself.
So what kind of, to your point, it wasn't a requirement early on in my relationship with Josh.
Yeah.
Right? Would it have been different if I said, you know, I need X, Y, and Z on my birthday. I need X, Y, and Z on our anniversary. I expect this. I expect this lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it would have changed, but I think that it's just a different orientation.
Yeah, and so it's a delicate balance too, because if you are seeking to not just engage with someone in one of these three areas that I've named today, and you are truly dating for love, that might be a very different conversation, right? But I think that at the onset, I am unapologetic about gifts are my love language. I really like gifts.
I know.
Can we go shopping today? Hey, so I was thinking that I might want this thing when we get to the mall. What do you think about that? Right? Just planting the seed. So if you don't quite know me well enough yet, you don't feel pressured, but you kind of think, well, she really wants this thing. Let me provide the thing for her that she wants. And I know you and I've talked about this before, because you're like, girl, you could buy that thing yourself. And I can, but where are my things? I'm here. I'm the baddest bitch you know. You see what I'm saying? Where are my things?
So it's so funny because as you were going through kind of the play-by-play of how you would set the stage for a new partner, like, oh, there's this thing at the mall, it really reminded me of this teaching tool that legal clinicians use called non-directive feedback, where you kind of provide the context for which your student, in this case your lover, is going to make the right decision for their client. I know, but you're not telling them, you're showing them.
I'm showing you.
And you're leading them.
And you can say no. And again, so this has a duality to it. So I would never say, because I showed up today, you should just give me a gift. I mean, I could, but I'm not Beyonce, so that wouldn't work out for me.
Do you think Jay-Z does that?
I mean, he got her like $1 million egg. I don't know.
What do you mean? Like an egg?
You mean like Game of Thrones? Like Khaleesi, the mother of dragons? He got her one of these eggs and it was like $1 million.
What do you do with it? Crack it?
You just look at it, girl. Yeah. So I don't know. But
She wanted an egg?
So it's not the point, Margo.
I would want something else with $1 million, bro.
The point is that there is also an equal effort that I like to believe I put into relationships as well. I think I'm a damn good partner, and I am becoming better at understanding, just how to make people feel loved and appreciated and how to anticipate my partner's needs. And so it's this dance where I do things for you that land for you, and you do things for me that land for me.
I love that for you.
Thank you, friend.
So I have a question for you, because we've kind of moved from sex work to transactional relationships to love language to close relationships. But what about this idea of people being in loving relationships but on the side engaging in sex work?
Ooh. So like having an OnlyFans page but being in a long-term relationship. This is interesting. I joke about this a lot, that I'll do something strange for some change. And I am definitely pro OnlyFans. I think it is one of the safest ways to engage in sex work for sure. The transaction is very obvious there. And if two people who are in a relationship are okay with it, I have absolutely no problem with it. It is a stream of income. That person is going to work like anyone else's. And it just depends on how they define the relationship, because there are many people who fit within all three of these circles, especially the commercial sex work circle. Margo, stop laughing. This is an academic conversation. I have to have this is the tool that I'm using to teach this concept. When you are in this circle as a commercial sex worker, many people are in long-term relationships and they do their dates on the side.
Like Stormy Daniels.
Here we go. Exactly.
I mean, among many, but
yeah,
she's one powerful woman.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, I think we're going to do an episode just on her because she may single-handedly take down Donald Trump. So I think if you think about feminism and sex work and the concentric circles of commercial sex work, sugar baby, I mean, I don't even know where they would fall.
Yeah.
There's something there.
I'm about to do a cartwheel. Absolutely. And I think that if we only saw her as a disempowered, abused woman, then we could not hold space for the narrative that you just said.
Okay. I want to just add one thing to the conversation, which is what kind of, as you would say, is the bee in my bonnet around sex work and the problematic tone that it often takes. Much of it is controlled by the male gaze and male expectations of what sex is and how a woman should have sex and how a woman should please a man and look for a man and dance for a man and be with a man. And that's where I get a little like, ugh, I don't know if this can be done in a safe, healthy way because there's so many things at play that are forcing people to engage in an act in a certain way, in a body that looks a certain way.
Yeah.
That is based on male pleasure.
Yeah. No, and I don't deny that, but I think what the folks who land here have done is they've been able to monetize that pleasure because the pleasure is going nowhere. And so the idea is how can we flip it on its head and actually gain something from it?
Absolutely. So if this is like a necessary evil, we need to make it safer. Sure. I wonder if we do that and you take the conversation to let's make it safer and celebrate it, which I can get there, except for the fact that so much of it is for male pleasure.
Yeah.
It's not an equal opportunity getting pleasure.
Yeah. I think that, so a couple things about that. And I think that this is where the heuxs come in. Because I think those of us who like sex, who are in a space where we are centering our pleasure, understand the importance of having this quid pro quo and that it not just being for a man. Because how could it be if you are also going to be pleased? It can't just be about your partner.
Right. So I guess in two of the concentric circles, the bottom one and the sugar babies.
Yeah. This is what we have in common here. Right?
No, but in both circles, not even in the concentric parts, it doesn't have to just be for male pleasure.
It does not. It does not. Now, the commercial sex worker, that is very different, and I definitely get your point. But I almost see them as independent contractors, and in a capitalist society, there is a need, there is a demand, and they are fulfilling the demand. If I go to CVS and I need a hairbrush, CVS is providing the hairbrush, right? There is this transaction that occurs. And the same thing, I think, applies to the male pleasure, and it doesn't have to once again be an exploitative relationship. It can and it is at times, but again, we're talking today about the times that it is not, because I think that goes out of the common narrative. I'll say one example and then we can wrap up. I remember hearing Amber Rose, who is one of my personal sheroes, probably came to prominence because she dated Kanye West, but has since moved on and is a wonderful woman in her own right in many, many ways, including holding a slut walk. She's held that for many years in LA. And Amber was talking to Larry King one time, and she was talking about how she grew up and how she became kind of like this sex bombshell, IG baddie, just baddie in every single way. And she talked about how her mother had fallen into a deep depression. They lived in Philly, and she was 16 and she had to get some money. They were going to lose their apartment. So there's an economic lens here, of course. And she pretended like she was 18 years old and went down to the local strip club and she started stripping. And she did that for years. And Larry King was like, oh my God, like, that was horrible. Kind of like, I'm sorry that you went through that. And she was like, that was the best job I ever had. I had so much fun, the camaraderie among the other strippers. It taught me so much about my womanhood, about dating. It was a great experience for me. And that was the moment when I thought to myself, who is telling that story? Because that's equally as important.
Absolutely. And I think what's been really helpful for me, particularly framing it within the context of capitalism, is that we all do work that we might not enjoy at some points in a day, in a year, in our professional lives for different reasons.
Period.
Right? We make decisions based on economics, based on our needs, based on our family's needs. And so this is one.
Yeah.
And if we can provide an environment that it's safer and people aren't exploited and make the money that they deserve.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it.
You don't have to do it. But we also don't get to judge people who do. Who do. My grandma says this thing, Margo, and tell me what you think about it. She says, let a man's money beat his dick out the pants.
I love your grandma.
So let's wrap up the episode. Margo, what is one thing that you learned this month?
So I think it was last week, but maybe it was this week. I was on Instagram Live with you.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I did know this, but I hadn't fully kind of really paid attention to it. I was 42 years old when I learned that I, Margo Catherine Lindauer, have done something way badder than my bestie Tashira. I have done so many more drugs than you. So many, right? I feel like such a badass. Again, no one should feel proud about
their drug use,
but I do. I think on this platform in particular,
okay,
I've gotten some feedback, right, that I'm a little square and I own it. There's a lot about me that is,
yeah.
But
no.
And I am open.
Yeah.
I am way open.
Listen, I love this for you. Because when you were like, yeah, that time I did cocaine, I was like, bitch, what?
In Italy. I went to a rave.
I've never been to a rave. I've never done Molly, ecstasy.
Twice.
No cocaine.
3 times.
But I'm also, as I said on the live, cocaine is a drug that I'm not fucking around with because I'm going to love it.
You will.
Yeah.
And I did and would never again.
Yes, you see, because it is too easy to go down the wrong
And also
road.
the policies and how it gets to this country. No way.
No way.
Okay, so that's what I learned this year old, this day old.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have to talk about that. What did you learn?
That I've had way more sex than you.
Well, that's not a surprise.
I've had some nasty, freaky, kinky sex. And we need to have a conversation because I'm thinking about going from kink light to full on kink. I think the summer is a great time to do it.
Are you going to share that journey?
I should. I think I want to document it.
I mean, I'm sure the video garage would be
a great place.
A great place.
I think I'm going to call it From the Bench to Butts. So like from the legal bench.
I love that.
To butt plugs.
Well, that's kind of light.
Yeah. Well, butt plugs. Says the person who's never had a butt plug.
But I'm just saying based on my knowledge.
Oh, it's kind of light.
It's like people do that.
Yeah, people do that. So I got to get some hardcore stuff in,
You need to get
friend.
whips.
Well, you don't know that.
Handcuffs.
Yeah, check.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Light.
Yeah.
We've got to go
something much, much deeper. So
okay, I'll think about it.
Yeah,
to help, to be an ally.
Thank you. I need the research for this summer, and we'll come back and we'll report.
Yeah, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you, friend.